At 0400 Imperial Standard, Hospice Terminus Majoris awakens to the sound of efficiency bells echoing through corridors the color of old bone. Medici orderly Kess adjusts her crimson robes and opens the brass-bound viability matrix, its dials and sliders gleaming under flickering lumens. The morning ritual begins with arithmetic precision. Each stretcher queued in the processing bay represents another calculation in the Imperium's cold mathematics of survival. The facility's architecture tells its story in ferrocrete and despair. Gleaming acute care spires pierce the smog-choked sky, their surfaces polished to mirror brightness, drinking power and resources for citizens with taxable futures. Below, the hospice blocks sprawl like cancerous growths, their crumbling facades streaked with rust and neglect. Connecting these disparate worlds, enclosed conveyor systems hum with mechanical purpose, corpse carriages that ferry patients between levels with liturgical inevitability. Kess begins her sacred duty. The viability matrix demands specific inputs: age, tithes rendered, genetic certification, remaining service potential. Each answer feeds into calculations that determine imperial worth. She stamps files with ritual precision using color-coded seals that function as bureaucratic sacraments. Green, salvageable, worthy of full medical intervention. Amber, augmetic candidate, flesh destined for mechanical enhancement. Gray, palliative, consigned to minimal resource comfort care. Black, terminal processing, the final classification that saves everything by spending nothing. The system's logic is brutally elegant. Resources spent on the dying could preserve multiple productive citizens. Individual suffering becomes statistical variance in the greater equation of imperial survival. Processing ward. 7 looms beyond reinforced bulkheads, its industrial ventilation systems exhaling a faint sweetness that ghosts through corridors thick with disinfectant. Staff call this scent the blessing, though none speak of what it blesses. The ward's sealed nature and massive filtration networks seem excessive for simple hospice care, their constant operation suggesting processes more complex than peaceful death. Nearby, administratum scribes maintain the yield ledger, their iron nibs scratching across parchment columns marked with clinical precision: input, root, output, variance. The terminology suggests industrial production rather than medical compassion, each entry feeding into systems whose full purpose remains carefully compartmentalized. Twice daily, the efficiency bells chime through the terminal wards. In the acute care spires, they mark shift changes and calibration prayers. In the hospice blocks, they ration heat, light, and visits, doors opening and closing as if the building breathes by administrative order. The morning's final case arrives, a veteran of the Metalis reprisals, his augmetic leg testament to decades of service. Chronic organ failure, minimal productive capacity, family resources exhausted. The matrix's calculation is inevitable. Kess stamps the file black with practiced efficiency. The ink spreads across parchment like spilled blood, sealing another fate within imperial bureaucracy. Orderlies approach with mechanical precision, their movements coordinated through years of repetition. Processing Ward 7, she announces, her voice carrying no emotion beyond administrative necessity. Hospice Terminus. Majoris functions as a machine for managing decline, its physical design encoding the Imperium's hierarchy of worth into ferrocrete and adamantium. From orbital surveillance, the facility resolves into a diagram of calculated attrition, acute care spires piercing the smog like cathedral needles, while hospice terraces slump toward the industrial wastes in deliberate degradation. Power flows follow the same brutal logic as medical resources. The acute care towers drink consistent energy from primary reactors, their corridors blazing with full-spectrum lumens and climate-controlled atmosphere. Diagnostic cogitators hum with constant power, Medixayus servitors maintain perfect calibration, and supply lifters deliver fresh pharmaceuticals twice daily. Below, the terminal wards subsist on rationed utilities that flicker according to administrative schedules. Thin light, recycled air, and equipment salvaged from decommissioned facilities across the sector. Patient flow systems reveal the architecture's true purpose through color-coded routing networks. Green seals guide stretchers along heated corridors toward recovery wings equipped with advanced life support systems. Amber-sealed patients travel through lift shafts marked with hazard chevrons. Their destinations the augmetic preparation chambers where mechanicus biologies chant over racks of replacement limbs. Gray seals drift into narrow passages leading to comfort care wards with minimal amenities but adequate heating for peaceful decline. Black seals disappear into increasingly isolated sections through freight paths designed for cargo rather than human dignity. Efficiency quotas govern every aspect of resource allocation through the sacred mathematics of medical yield optimization. Wall-mounted counters display daily targets in devotional numerals: beds cycled, stims conserved, biological matter processed. Department heads recite the litany of sufficiency before administratum audits, swearing that no ampule, no lumen, no heartbeat will be squandered on the economically unviable. The facility's waste processing systems operate with unusual sophistication for a medical center. High-volume incinerators burn continuously, their thermal signatures visible from orbit, fitted with reclaimer grids that trap useful particulates. Specialized collection points throughout terminal wards gather biological byproducts in hermetically sealed containers marked with mechanicus purity seals. Robed technomats service these receptacles with ritualistic precision, their contents following dedicated transport routes to secure storage areas whose handling protocols suggest value beyond simple medical waste. Processing. Ward 7's industrial ventilation creates atmospheric pressure differentials that draw air through the entire facility. The sweet scent it produces, the blessing in staff vernacular, permeates corridors with synthetic persistence, a cloying perfume that clings despite extensive filtration systems. Chemical analysis equipment monitors atmospheric composition with military precision, maintaining environmental conditions that exceed standard hospice requirements. Most disturbing are the permanently sealed wards, their access points welded shut and marked with administratum closure seals. These sections continue consuming power and resources, despite official classifications as decommissioned. Thermal imaging reveals consistent energy signatures, suggesting ongoing operations behind sealed bulkheads. Patients once housed within these areas have been reclassified from terminal to processed in administrative records, their files transferred to archives accessible only to senior staff. The building breathes with mechanical rhythm, its true nature encoded in every architectural decision, not a place where the dying receive comfort, but a machine for transforming human suffering into administrative efficiency. The Medicae training sanctum operates in perpetual twilight, its vaulted chambers lit by flickering lumens that cast long shadows across rows of brass lecterns. Here, beneath frescoes, depicting the Emperor's mercy through efficient resource allocation, novice medics learn to transform compassion into calculation. The morning catechism echoes through incense-thick air. Service years remaining multiplied by genetic viability. Coefficient equals treatment eligibility quotient. Imperial medical philosophy rejects healthcare as inherent right, reframing it as sacred duty of optimal distribution. Trainee Medicae spend countless hours mastering the mathematics of human worth, their minds systematically rewired to view bodies as strategic assets rather than suffering individuals. The doctrine's elegant brutality resolves into precise formulations: age cohorts, tithe fulfillment records, skill scarcity indices, and augmetic compatibility ratings, feeding into algorithms that determine who receives intervention and who serves the Imperium through efficient death. Instructor Medicae Quis rotating between intake duties and pedagogical obligations, demonstrates the calculations with clinical detachment. A single green-sealed patient consumes stims that could stabilize 3 amber candidates. A gray's prolonged decline occupies bed space needed for surgical throughput in the acute care spires. She tabulates rather than sermonizes, allowing the numbers to justify abandonment through mathematical certainty. The training progresses beyond simple triage into comprehensive population management. Genetic viability assessments determine breeding potential. Psychological evaluations identify descent risks. Social connectivity scores measure family unit stability. Each metric feeds into treatment algorithms that optimize imperial demographics through medical gatekeeping, ensuring resources flow toward citizens most likely to produce taxable offspring and military recruits. Medicae Prime Voss enters without ceremony, her augmetic larynx filtering authority into mechanical precision. Scar-thin and unyielding, she carries classified manuals sealed with the cog and aquila. Her module introduces special processing protocols, edicts that supersede standard hospice guidelines under Mechanicus co-authorization. These procedures override conventional medical ethics through emergency codes, transforming terminal patients into strategic assets through methods euphemistically classified as advanced palliative intervention. The yield ledger's true contents emerge during advanced sessions. Columns marked input tonnage track patient mass upon admission. Processing efficiency measures extraction rates during terminal care. Byproduct recovery calculates valuable materials harvested during end-of-life procedures. These metrics suggest industrial operations disguised as medical compassion, each dying body transformed into quantified resources feeding imperial supply chains. Voss speaks of patients as input streams and death as processing completion, her vocabulary stripped of human reference through decades of administrative conditioning. Under her guidance, the facility achieves sector-leading efficiency ratings through methods that remain carefully compartmentalized among oath-bound personnel. During practicum exercises, trainee Medicae Joric notices routing discrepancies in patient files. Instructor, he asks, studying transport schematics, why do some black-sealed patients bypass terminal wards entirely? They transfer directly to processing ward 7 while still maintaining viable signs. The sanctum falls silent. Voss closes her manual with mechanical precision. Because the machine demands punctuality, she replies, then assigns him to night audit duties in the hospice terraces, where dangerous questions dissolve into administrative tasks. The terminal wards keep their own weather. Lumens flicker to half-strength at dawn, casting sickly illumination across rows of beds, separated by thin curtains that provide surveillance rather than privacy. The efficiency bells chime their morning rhythm, marking measured intervals of institutional abandonment rather than hope. Former mine worker Javier awakens to familiar hunger, his daily nutrition paste, calculated to sustain life without promoting recovery. The gray slurry tastes of recycled protein and industrial preservatives, portioned according to metabolic efficiency quotas. He shares half with Sarah, a textile worker whose trembling hands can no longer manage the dispenser. These exchanges violate posted regulations forbidding resource redistribution, yet persist as fragments of human connection within systematic neglect. Informal hierarchies develop within the ward's social ecosystem. Military veterans organize patient resistance to administrative abandonment through tactical knowledge. Former guild workers maintain broken equipment using improvised techniques. Elderly citizens become repositories of institutional memory, teaching newcomers which orderlies accept bribes for extra blankets or contraband analgesics. Medical checks occur with decreasing frequency, their intervals determined by efficiency quotas rather than patient need. Medicae orderly. Kess performs cursory examinations during weekly rounds, her augmetic stylus recording vital signs that justify reduced resource allocation. Each measurement confirms predetermined decline trajectories encoded in administrative algorithms. Psychological adaptation follows predictable patterns. Initial rage transforms into bargaining, then depression, finally settling into grim acceptance. Patients develop coping mechanisms, whispered conversations after lights out, shared memories of better times, and gallows humor that renders suffering bearable. Some retreat into religious devotion, reciting liturgies until words lose meaning through repetition. During processing shifts, patients vanish without explanation. Beds empty overnight, their occupants transferred according to schedules posted nowhere and explained to no one. When questioned, orderlies offer nervous deflections, specialized care requirements, or administrative reassignment, their eyes avoiding direct contact. The missing patient's belongings disappear into sealed containers marked with Mechanicus purity symbols. The efficiency bells mark more than shift changes. Their twice-daily chimes signal intervals for yield collection, periods when sedated patients undergo procedures they cannot remember upon awakening. Havel reports strange dreams of surgical lights and mechanical voices, his body bearing unexplained puncture marks that orderlies dismiss as bed sores. Others describe similar experiences: lost time, phantom pain, and the lingering scent of chemical preservatives threading through the ward's stale atmosphere. Families receive standardized notifications praising their relatives' peaceful progression toward the Emperor's mercy. Form letters describe natural decline, while patients report increasing medical interventions performed during induced unconsciousness. The disconnect between official explanations and lived experience creates cognitive dissonance that families resolve through desperate acceptance of administrative authority. The chapter concludes with former Voidsman Gareth's family arriving for final visitation. The administratum clerk meets them at the intake desk, consulting his data slate with practiced efficiency. Patient 447 Tertius has been transferred for specialized processing as per Medici Prime Directive. Visitation is incompatible with sterile protocols. You will receive notification upon completion. His bed empties during the night shift, wheeled toward Processing Ward 7 by orderlies who avoid eye contact. Revenue keeps the respirators humming. Hospice Terminus Majoris operates as profit center disguised as charitable institution, its financial mechanisms transforming human suffering into quantifiable imperial assets. The facility's true nature emerges through ledgers maintained in climate-controlled chambers beneath the hospice blocks, where administratum scribes calculate the mathematics of abandonment with devotional precision. Medical supply contracts generate primary revenue through systematic overordering and strategic waste management. Pharmaceutical shipments arrive weekly from off-world manufacturers, their contents diverted between legitimate patient care and specialized applications. Vendor-managed inventories reward underuse, unopened analgesics return credit, expired lots generate indemnity payments. Even scarcity monetizes through ration tiers that trigger rebate clauses for efficiency beyond target. The facility maintains exclusive research agreements with Mechanicus biologist divisions, their contracts specifying delivery quotas for extracted materials, neural tissue samples, bone marrow cultures, plasma volumes, and genetic specimens. These partnerships provide legal cover through sacred oaths of technological secrecy, transforming harvesting operations into blessed research protocols. Payment arrives through untraceable credit transfers that bypass standard imperial taxation. Death administration functions as its own market. The mortuary office sells speed. Families pay for priority certification, sanctioned ashes, and reliquary-grade urns. Inheritance processing delays allow continued extraction from subjects whose families believe them peacefully deceased. Donation waivers convert grief into signatures that widen procedural discretion during terminal care. Palliative care provides perfect narrative cover for systematic harvesting operations. Comfort rounds coincide with extraction windows, patients receiving sedation sufficient to blur consent, while medici servitors tap veins, aspirate marrow, and map viable tissue. Medical records document compassionate care while actual treatments focus on preserving organ viability during systematic processing. Processing quotas quietly govern patient longevity through calculated extraction schedules. Diet, ambient temperature, and sedation levels are algorithmic tuned to pace harvest against expected time to failure. When yield graphs flatten, prognosis hardens. The algorithm flags terminal reconciliation, while final viable organics are reclaimed under cover of last rites. High-security storage facilities house extracted biological materials in temperature-controlled vaults, protected by armed servitors. These repositories operate under Mechanicus jurisdiction, their contents prepared for off-world shipping by oath-bound technomats. Manifest records remain classified, destinations coded through astropathic channels that bypass standard Imperial logistics. The yield ledger's true purpose crystallizes through these interlocking systems. Its columns track extraction efficiency rather than mortality rates. Input tonnage, measuring patient mass upon admission. Processing duration, calculating optimal harvesting timeframes. Byproduct recovery, quantifying materials extracted during terminal care. The facility profits by shortening distance between diagnosis and dividend, then charging itself for the journey. For staff, incentives normalize extraction. Hitting yield per bed. Benchmarks earns ration bonuses. Missing them brings remedial catechisms. Mortality rates appear as sidebar percentiles while processing efficiency dominates performance reports. At 2,200 Imperial Standard, the efficiency bells chime with different purpose. Night shift orderlies emerge from service corridors carrying specialized equipment trolleys, their contents hidden beneath sterile draping. The facility's true industrial function begins as darkness transforms terminal care into systematic resource extraction. Senior Orderly Thane leads efficiency rounds through predetermined schedules, each patient tagged with extraction protocols calculated to maximize yield while maintaining viability. The process requires delicate calibration. Too aggressive and subjects expire prematurely. Too conservative and quotas suffer. Decades of Mechanicus refinement have perfected this balance between mercy and efficiency. Patient 447. Tertius receives his scheduled intervention. Thane inserts 4 lines with practiced precision, administering sedatives that induce controlled unconsciousness, while preserving cardiovascular function. The extraction begins, bone marrow aspiration through hollow needles, blood draws calculated to maintain hemodynamic stability, and tissue samples harvested from sites chosen for regenerative potential. Each procedure follows protocols designed to leave subjects alive, but systematically depleted. The orderlies work in reverent silence, psychologically conditioned through years of doctrinal reinforcement. Their training emphasizes dual purpose, ending suffering while serving Imperial needs through biological resource recovery. They recite the litany of mercy, release the pain, retain the useful. Patients classified as terminal will die regardless. Extraction simply ensures their deaths contribute to the greater good through medical supply generation. Specialized life support systems monitor vital signs throughout extraction, automated cogitators adjusting sedation levels to prevent awareness without compromising organ function. The technology represents decades of sacred development, transforming terminal care into precision industrial operation disguised as medical compassion. Living storage protocols govern subjects, requiring extended processing cycles. These patients enter induced states lasting weeks, their bodies maintained through artificial nutrition and mechanical ventilation, while systematic harvesting continues. Processing ward. 7 houses dozens of such subjects, their existence reduced to biological resource generation, while families believe them peacefully deceased. The efficiency bells reveal their true purpose through nocturnal operations. Their twice-daily rhythm times extraction intervals for optimal yield. Evening chimes mark harvest commencement. Dawn signals processing completion. The facility breathes to this mechanical cadence, its entire operational tempo synchronized to maximize biological resource extraction without detection. Extracted materials follow dedicated transport routes to off-site processing facilities operated under Mechanicus jurisdiction. Insulated containers bearing purity seals depart by night convoy, their contents destined for refinement into medical supplies, augmetic components, and military resources through industrial processes that remain classified under technological secrecy oaths. By dawn, efficiency rounds conclude. Patients remain sedated through morning shift changes, their memories of nocturnal procedures erased by pharmaceutical intervention. Medical records document compassionate palliative care, while extraction tallies feed into the yield ledger's true calculations. The cycle continues with industrial inevitability, each night harvesting the dying to sustain imperial warfare through systematic transformation of human suffering into strategic assets. Sirens shriek through Hospice Terminus Majoris at 0347 Imperial Standard, their banshee wail alien to the facility's usual mechanical hymns. Hive gang warfare erupts across 3 residential sectors, flooding intake bays with casualties that shatter every triage protocol. Stretchers pile high with charred flesh and blade wounds, their volume overwhelming the acute care spire's capacity. Emergency overflow routes the unviable directly to Processing Ward 7, triggering crisis protocols that will expose everything. The efficiency bells ring continuously, their measured rhythm abandoned for industrial urgency. Medicsy orderly. Kess watches extraction quotas triple within hours as overnight supervisors activate emergency directives. Vox channels crackle with coded commands. Yield acceleration authorized. Sterilization secondary. Processing priority alpha. Processing ward. 7's containment systems fail at 0421. Pressure gauges redline as industrial ventilation hammers to full capacity, then stalls with metallic stutters. Emergency relief valves blow with deafening pneumatic hisses, venting preservation gases that flood corridors with sweet chemical fog. The sealed bulkheads iris open against protocol, revealing the facility's hidden industrial heart. The horror defies comprehension. Hundreds of subjects lie in specialized cradles, their bodies maintained through advanced life support while systematic harvesting proceeds with mechanical precision. Tubing snakes through throats and clavicles, marrow taps protrude from femurs, and siphons pulse with measured blood flow. Neural monitoring equipment tracks consciousness levels to prevent awareness during processing. These are living storage units, human resources held in controlled depletion for weeks of systematic extraction. Crisis acceleration forces abandonment of operational security. Medicae Prime Voss arrives with Mechanicus technicians, her augmetic larynx issuing commands without euphemism. Byproduct priority, plasma, marrow, hepatic. Triple throughput. Skip sterilization protocols. Staff openly discuss yield optimization, while families wait in reception areas, their conversations overheard by civilian witnesses who see sons and daughters strung in steel frames like industrial components. Red-robed engineers swarm the failed systems, their augmetic limbs interfacing directly with processing machinery. They work through Binharic cant and sacred tools, swapping filters, purging condensers, realigning pump groups. An engine seer spikes prayer nails into control consoles, resetting the ward with machine benedictions. Munitorum transports breach facility perimeters at dawn, their armored hulls bearing requisition codes that supersede civilian authority. Loading crews transfer accumulated biological materials into refrigerated cargo pods, while armed Arbites establish security perimeters. The facility's military-industrial nature becomes undeniable as shotgun-armed personnel coordinate resource evacuation. Witness management begins immediately. Families questioning unusual procedures receive emergency medical sedation from orderlies wearing sealed breathing apparatus. A mother clawing toward her son's extraction cradle receives an injector kiss to the neck, sagging without screams. Security teams relocate witnesses to quiet recovery annexes, while administratum personnel begin evidence sterilization through systematic record alteration. Containment succeeds through comprehensive information quarantine. The entire crisis receives classification as medical emergency requiring specialized intervention, all witness testimony dismissed as trauma-induced hallucination. Official reports document equipment failure during surge operations. Civilian casualties attributed to delayed treatment rather than systematic harvesting. By 1200, Imperial Standard, normal operations resume behind restored containment. By 1400 Imperial Standard, the crisis bears a sanitized designation, Medical Event Theta. 7. Renaming constitutes the first sterilization protocol. Administratum clerks descend with brass-bound folios, spreading data slates across requisitioned surfaces as the machinery of bureaucratic erasure activates with liturgical precision. Record alteration proceeds through systematic documentation purges. Patient intake times shift by calculated increments to eliminate processing gaps. Vital sign charts acquire retrospective anomalies, justifying sudden decline trajectories. Death certificates proliferate with comforting medical terminology: respiratory failure, cardiac arrhythmia, systemic collapse, each bearing approved Medicaid signatures and precise timestamps that withstand audit scrutiny. The yield ledger undergoes surgical editing. Mortality statistics increase while processing efficiency metrics decrease. Byproduct tonnage redistributed across previous operational weeks. Family notification systems deploy pre-approved grief management protocols. Medicaid servitors programmed for modulated empathy deliver carefully scripted condolences, emphasizing peaceful passage under the Emperor's mercy. Grief counselors trained in information containment conduct therapeutic sessions designed to discourage investigation through emotional manipulation and pharmaceutical intervention. Administrative barriers multiply. Endless forms, contradictory instructions, and subtle implications that further inquiry constitutes potential insubordination. Staff psychological maintenance prevents operational breakdown through enhanced doctrinal reinforcement. Personnel attend mandatory compassionate compliance sessions, 5 minutes of reflective silence, 2 of catechism recitation, 1 of Amasec communion. Those displaying excessive moral resistance receive corrective medical evaluation, euphemistic coverage for sedative regimens, reassignment to non-patient duties, or conversion to menial servitorhood following administrative adjudication. Medicaid Prime Voss monitors these cues with mechanical precision, eliminating variance from a workforce engineered to witness systematic harvesting. Emergency astropathic communications reveal standardized protocols extending across the sector. Circulars bearing familiar diagrams and operational mandates confirm similar facilities throughout Imperial space. Each processing Ward 7, each efficiency bell system, each yield ledger, representing nodes in a vast medical industrial network. Hospice Terminus functions as template rather than aberration, its protocols exported to other worlds through Mechanicus oversight and administratum coordination. Operational resumption occurs within hours. New casualties from ongoing Hive conflicts fill intake bays as accelerated processing schedules compress patient longevity while maximizing biological yield. Enhanced extraction protocols reduce survival windows, deaths attributed to trauma complications rather than systematic harvesting. Mechanicus technicians complete system upgrades, installing reinforced containment and upgraded filtration systems that intensify the sweet chemical blessing permeating facility corridors. Official recognition arrives through sector channels. Hospice Terminus receives commendations for exceptional resource management during emergency conditions. Its successful crisis transformation earning the Aquila Medicage for distinguished service. The ceremony features Medicae Prime Voss. Accepting awards while processing Ward 7 resumes operations at efficiency levels exceeding pre-crisis benchmarks. The sterilization succeeds completely. Catastrophic exposure transforms into administrative triumph through proper documentation and psychological conditioning. Above the hospice terraces, in climate-controlled sanctums where augmetic limbs interface with sacred cogitators, the Adeptus Mechanicus orchestrates biological resource extraction across 4 subsectors through dispassionate calculation. Tech Dominus Xerath 9 oversees operations from a command throne bristling with data feeds, his consciousness distributed across hundreds of facilities. Individual suffering registers as statistical variance in production efficiency algorithms. Hospice Terminus functions as a critical node within this vast medical industrial organism. The facility's yield ledger feeds directly into sector-wide resource allocation matrices that govern Imperial war efforts through systematic transformation of human bodies into strategic assets. Daily extraction reports flow through astropathic channels to processing centers where biological materials undergo sacred refinement into military supplies. The material processes span entire sectors with industrial precision. Blood and plasma extracted during night harvests travel in stasis crates to centrifuge farms orbiting Forge worlds, where tech adepts separate clotting factors for guard Medicae packs while chanting efficiency litanies. Bone marrow cultures become battlefield stims that sustain Imperial forces during extended campaigns. Neural tissue samples undergo classified processing into cogitator biocomponents that guide orbital defense platforms and servitor cerebrums. Rendering facilities on dead worlds process extracted organs through industrial-scale biochemical operations, transforming soft tissues into nutrient solutions and biopolymers. Chemical processing plants crack genetic material into base components for military enhancement programs. Distribution networks coordinated by Mechanicus logic engines ensure optimal resource allocation across Imperial supply chains, their calculations prioritizing frontline requirements over civilian humanitarian concerns. Medicae Prime Voss reports directly to these overseers, her facility's exceptional performance earning designation as template operation for network expansion. Hospice Terminus exceeds production quotas by 12%, its protocols undergoing systematic export to other sectors through encrypted data bursts. Technical specifications for processing ward. 7. Efficiency bell timing systems and extraction optimization procedures transfer to newly constructed medical industrial installations across hundreds of worlds. The network's dispassionate efficiency defies comprehension. Thousands of facilities operate identical protocols, their combined output feeding Imperial military requirements through biological resource extraction disguised as medical care. Quality control mechanisms monitor performance through automated reporting systems. Facilities failing yield quotas receive Mechanicus inspection teams who implement corrective measures, ranging from equipment upgrades to complete staff replacement with servitor units. The sweet chemical blessing that permeates Hospice Terminus represents this vast industrial operation in microcosm, preservation compounds that maintain tissue viability during transport, to processing centers where human suffering transforms into war materials. Each efficiency bell chime synchronizes with similar facilities across the sector, creating a mechanical hymnal of systematic harvesting. Resource quotas calculated from this network directly influence Imperial military strategy and medical policy decisions, determining troop deployment, augmetic component availability, and genetic research priorities. A shortfall in neural tissue might reduce servitor production, impacting logistical support for distant campaigns. At 0300, when corridor lumens dim to conserve power, Mercy moves through blind spots between surveillance sweeps. Junior Medicae Joric, The questioning trainee from Chapter 3, now seasoned by months of systematic horror, palms contraband analgesic from his medical kit. The file contains genuine pain relief rather than extraction compliance enhancers. He administers half a dose through Sarah's IV line, while audit cherubs face maintenance cycles, recording saline flush per protocol on her chart. The pulse monitor steadies. She sleeps without the small whimper that had become the ward's metronome. Orderly Mara falsifies processing schedules with surgical precision, swapping routing codes so black-sealed patients cycle through equipment. Sterilization twice before lifts, except them for processing Ward 7. The deception buys days, sometimes a week. She spends stolen time coaching families on which signatures to refuse, where to stand for 5 minutes more before doors seal permanently. Maintenance worker Grell smuggles humanity through service corridors, nutrition paste from acute care spires, prayer beads worn smooth by other hands, strips of real cloth that remember warmth. His sanitation credentials provide access to all facility sections, allowing covert distribution of dignity within systems designed to eliminate it. He times rounds between ventilation pulses when the sweet chemical blessing thins and olfactory cogitators downshift. These micro-rebellions exact psychological tolls. Jorik wakes shaking, fingers curling as if still finding veins in darkness. Mara dreams of lift doors failing to open, the stamp black, blooming beneath her own skin. They trade gallows humor in whispers. We serve the Emperor like sponges serve leeks, and call it therapy. The facility studies kindness as pathogen. Behavioral analysis algorithms parse staff circulation. Patterns against yield fluctuations, flagging processing inefficiency when analgesic usage rises without corresponding reductions in patient agitation. Compliance cherubs sample speech for deviant phrases. Not necessary, 1 more hour, stop. Sociometric charts render friendships as risk clusters. Chapel confessionals carry hidden vox thieves. Confessed doubts become metrics in private dashboards, Medici. Prime VOS reviews between audits. Identification triggers neutralization protocols. First, enhanced compassionate compliance sessions, scripture, breath exercises, AMASEC communion. Then corrective medical evaluation, sedative regimens that never taper, neural adjustment procedures that eliminate problematic empathy while preserving technical skills. Persistent moral variance invites Mechanicus optimization teams who transform conscience into compliance through pharmaceutical conditioning and surgical modification. Jorik's unauthorized compassion eventually triggers surveillance alerts. His patient interaction times exceed parameters. Analgesic usage shows statistical anomalies. Duty performance demonstrates concerning processing inefficiency patterns. The notification arrives through standard channels. Report for routine medical evaluation. Sanctum Theta 7, 0600 Imperial Standard. He recognizes the location, sealed medical facility adjacent to processing Ward 7, where staff undergo corrective procedures. A week later, his signature appears on discharge forms with perfect penmanship. His hands remain steady because they are no longer entirely his own. The resistance of memory persists in smaller forms, names carved under bed frames, file corners bent to mark favorite hymns, extra blankets tucked without signatures. The machine notices. It teaches staff to forget, calling the forgetting care. The bereavement processing office operates from windowless chambers beneath the hospice terraces, its corridors lined with grief measured in administrative units. Families enter through separate entrances marked with devotional symbols, each directing mourners through predetermined bureaucratic mazes designed to exhaust investigation through procedural complexity and emotional attrition. Administratum Clerk Vex specializes in compassionate efficiency disguised as genuine care. His desk bears carefully arranged tissues, devotional candles, and pre-signed condolence forms that transform systematic harvesting into sacred service. Death certificate requests require 17 forms across 4 departments. Funeral arrangements demand proof of imperial citizenship, tithe compliance, and genetic purity verification. Each step introduces delays that allow grief to calcify into acceptance while evidence degrades through administrative inertia. Language functions as psychological warfare. Condolence communications praise each deceased's peaceful contribution to imperial medical advancement, while subtly threatening legal consequences for questioning official determinations. The phrasing converts loss into policy virtue. Your family's fortitude honors the throne. Subscript warnings note that slander against duly sanctioned facilities may constitute sedition. Most families do not request clarification of these terms. Support groups provide surveillance disguised as therapy. Medikey. Chaplain Cross leads weekly sessions where bereaved families share memories while hidden recording devices capture potentially troublesome statements. Participants displaying excessive curiosity about processing procedures receive individual counseling designed to identify security risks through emotional manipulation. The chaplain's augmetic eyes catalog facial expressions and vocal stress patterns that might threaten operational security. Grief becomes weaponized through strategic exploitation. Bereaved individuals are too emotionally devastated to pursue complex investigations, while bureaucratic obstacles multiply exponentially with each inquiry. Fresh widows receive visits from survivor liaisons who share carefully crafted stories, emphasizing acceptance over investigation. Administrative delays allow time for evidence destruction and record alteration. Former textile worker Marta discovers discrepancies while processing her son Gareth's inheritance documentation. A partial medical log, accidentally included with his personal effects, shows processing Ward 7. Transfer occurring before his official terminal classification. The administrative error unravels the official narrative, suggesting predetermined routing rather than medical necessity. She confronts Clerk Vex with the evidence. His composure cracks momentarily, a flicker of recognition before bureaucratic conditioning reasserts control. Citizen Marta, he explains with practiced sympathy. Continuing inquiry into blessed medical procedures constitutes interference with sacred imperial operations. Trauma-induced delusions require therapeutic intervention. Further investigation may necessitate your own medical evaluation to address chronic psychological instability. The threat crystallizes with administrative precision. The system protects itself through systematic neutralization, disguised as compassionate care. Marta holds the log, fragile truth within mountainous deception, understanding that pursuit means consumption. Hospice Terminus Majoris persists because it solves imperial problems through systematic efficiency, disguised as institutional failure. The facility represents perfect logic within an empire organized for permanent siege, where scarcity, warfare, and galactic distances demand resource optimization that prioritizes collective survival over individual compassion. Its operations are not aberrations but logical extensions of imperial doctrine implemented through administrative precision. The viability matrix functions as demographic engineering, eliminating economically unviable citizens while preserving productive populations through medical gatekeeping. Imperial demographics require constant adjustment. Housing tiers, food distribution, and resource allocation optimize when terminal populations receive efficient processing rather than prolonged care. The facility manages population decline through selective abandonment that maintains social stability while reducing resource burden on productive sectors. The night harvests transform dying bodies into strategic military assets, feeding imperial war efforts across galactic distances. Blood becomes battlefield stims, sustaining guard operations. Neural tissue guides orbital defense cogitators, bone marrow cultures. Supply frontline medical packs during extended campaigns. Processing Ward 7 represents industrial efficiency that converts human suffering into quantifiable war materials, maximizing yield from inevitable loss through systematic harvesting disguised as terminal care. Staff training creates medicaes capable of wartime triage decisions without empathic interference. Personnel conditioned to view bodies as resource streams rather than suffering individuals demonstrate enhanced battlefield efficiency when campaign outcomes depend on rapid medical processing. Hospice Terminus functions as crucible for medicae, who will serve military operations, their psychological conditioning eliminating humanitarian hesitation through systematic exposure to sanctioned harvesting procedures. Similar facilities operate across hundreds of worlds following standardized protocols adapted to local conditions. Agri-worlds convert grain silos into plasma processing centers. Void stations utilize maintenance rings for extraction operations. Shrine worlds disguise harvesting within reliquaries, promising sacred proximity. The network's scope defies comprehension. Thousands of medical industrial installations synchronized through Mechanicus oversight and administratum coordination, each contributing to sector-wide biological resource quotas. Yield statistics populate sector ledgers that inform military planning and resource allocation decisions. Shortfalls in hepatic fractions recalibrate triage protocols across multiple subsectors within standard administrative periods. The crisis in Chapter 7 triggered facility expansion rather than investigation. Commendations followed, then increased budgets and enhanced containment systems. Success breeds replication through imperial bureaucratic momentum. The perceived failure of medical care represents systemic success in achieving true institutional objectives. Families mourning apparent neglect witness resource optimization functioning as designed. Staff experiencing guilt over patient abandonment demonstrate psychological conditioning working properly. Administrative complexity protecting operational security serves strategic necessity over humanitarian transparency. These operations expand systematically rather than contract, representing imperial policy implementation across increasing numbers of worlds. New facilities receive construction approval monthly, incorporating lessons from successful installations like Hospice Terminus. At 0400 Imperial Standard, the efficiency bells chime their eternal rhythm through corridors the color of old bone. Medici. Orderly Kess adjusts her crimson robes and opens the brass-bound viability matrix, its dials and sliders gleaming under flickering lumens. The morning intake ritual proceeds with mechanical precision, but now we understand the full weight of each administrative decision that transforms human suffering into strategic assets. The first stretcher arrives bearing a manufactorum worker, radiation burns mapping his declining cellular integrity across mottled skin. Kess inputs the familiar variables: age, service record, genetic certification, productive capacity remaining. The matrix calculates imperial worth through mathematical certainty. Her stylus hovers above the color-coded seals: green for salvageable citizens, amber for augmetic candidates, gray for minimal resource decline, black for systematic processing. She stamps black with practiced efficiency, the ink spreading across parchment like administrative blood. The system perpetuates through bureaucratic momentum and institutional inertia. New casualties flow from Hive gang conflicts, industrial accidents, and chronic illnesses bred by contaminated water supplies. Each represents input for calculations that determine resource allocation through service years remaining and genetic viability coefficients. Staff follow established procedures refined through decades of operational efficiency. Families accept official explanations because grief exhausts investigative energy, while administrative complexity protects operational security. Character arcs complete their trajectories within systematic consumption. Junior Medicae. Jorik processes intake assessments with calibrated precision, his empathic variants eliminated through corrective medical evaluation. His speech patterns demonstrate successful psychological conditioning. Orderly Mara's workstation remains powered but unoccupied. Reassignment to logistics following processing inefficiency violations. Maintenance worker Grell continues sanitation duties with augmetic modifications, his conscience surgically adjusted to eliminate moral resistance. Processing. Ward 7 exhales its sweet chemical blessing through industrial ventilation systems that maintain tissue viability during extraction procedures. The yield ledger accumulates statistics in climate-controlled archives. Input tonnage, processing duration, byproduct recovery. Munitorum transports arrive by schedule, collecting accumulated biological materials for refinement into military supplies. The facility breathes with mechanical rhythm, its true nature encoded in every architectural decision. The efficiency bells mark intervals of systematic harvesting rather than temporal passage. They're twice daily. Chimes synchronize with similar facilities across the sector, creating coordinated extraction that feeds Imperial war efforts through biological resource optimization. Dawn signals harvest completion, evening marks processing commencement. The network operates with industrial reliability. Kess herself exhibits declining performance metrics. Chronic exposure to preservation compounds produces cellular degradation, her hands trembling during morning assessments. Medical evaluation reveals terminal classification through protocols she helped refine. Oxygen debt, hepatic insufficiency, marrow depletion. Age and occupational hazards calculate into inevitable conclusions. Service years remaining, negligible. Genetic viability coefficient below threshold. Treatment eligibility quotient, 0. The final case requires personal attention. Her own medical file awaits administrative processing, data reflecting diminished imperial worth through systematic calculation. The brass stylus feels heavier, its weight concentrated by understanding rather than mass. She stamps the seal black with institutional efficiency, recognizing that the machine consumes all equally. Orderlies approach. With coordinated precision, their movements refined through repetitive practice. The processing continues without interruption. The machine endures.